So this is the case study that we are going through. I've already posted the answers to the case study in the Google Classroom, so you can take a look at it. The objective of this session is more to teach you all how to dissect a case study, how to understand what the question is trying to ask for, and to deliver the necessary econ stuff so that you can do well for your case study. Okay, so this was 2019 year 1 block test. So the 19S63, right? Their class took this in year 1. So that was prior to the pandemic. That is why they had to do a full 30-mark case study for their block test. But for your case, you only do 20 marks. So let's take a look at the questions first. We shall spend most of the time dissecting the question. So as you can see, right, a full case study, right, if you recall what I said, is split into 12 plus 18. Okay, which adds up to 30 marks. So the key is that the 12 marks, right? Have you noticed the command word is quite simple? It's more or less a lower order. You have described, you have comment, you have explained, you have explained, and you have explained. Okay, so these are what we call the lower order skills. Okay, lower order skills. On the other hand, right, the 18 marks, do you see the word discuss and discuss? So they are what we call higher order skills. So HOS, right, stands for higher order skills. These are what we call the DRQ, data response questions. So from the marks alone, it tells you that you got to spend a bit more time in the HOS questions compared to the DRQs. Okay, DRQs. So for the J1 who did this block test, right, they had 1 hour 15 minutes. So 1 hour 15 minutes, but for your block test, because your case study is only 20 marks, I believe they'll only be giving you 45 minutes. Okay, 45 minutes. So plan your time accordingly. So just like your TA2, right, there will only be one higher order skill question for your block test. But the true case study will have 2 higher order skills. Okay, 2 higher order skills. Now, so some common tips involved is that try not to spend too much time on the DRQs. Okay, DRQ. So as you read the question, right, remember, there are probably only maybe two command words that has not much econs. Describe and compare. Okay, describe one trend, compare 2 trends. These 2 command words are usually not much econs. But all the other command words, right? Explain, account, comment, discuss, all these, they are ultimately a test on your econs. Okay, the test on econs. So there will be some questions where the econs concepts are pretty clear. They will actually state to you what is the econs concept that they are trying to test you. So for example, right, let's look at A part 2. For A part 2, right, they spell out the econs concept, which is income elasticity of demand. If you look at part B, right, they also spell out the econs concept, which is maximum price. Maximum price. So hopefully when you see such questions, as they spell out the econs concept, you will have an idea what is the terms that you have to say. Okay, you have to say. So for example, for part A part 2, right? Do you all still remember what's YED? Okay, let me test some of you all. Louis, do you still recall what YED is about?
Income.
Income. Okay, so income has changed, right? What happens next?
Sorry, what did you say?
Okay, what happens when income change? What does YED say?
The demand changes.
Yes, very good. How the demand change as the income change. Okay, income change. So for part D, right, a maximum price, right? In case again you are lost, right? Ask yourself, what is this maximum price? Who is this maximum price supposed to benefit? Are they supposed to benefit producers or consumers? So when you read the case study, right, you will find out that it is the consumer that is complaining that the prices of formula milk is too high. Okay, it's too high. So that hopefully should tell you that if you are complaining the price is too high, for the maximum price to make sense, for the price control to make sense, it must be set below the free market price. Okay, below the free market price. Are you clear? So this is how you can use the question to hopefully give you a clue what you must say. However, there will be some questions where the concept will be hidden. So let's look at part C. Question C. Can you see? For part C, they didn't spell out what econs concept explicitly, right? So how do you know what econs they are trying to test you for part C? Okay, maybe Chow In, is it? You want to have some idea? Chow In? What econs concept you think they are testing for part C?
Is it PED and PES?
Okay, yes, that's quite a good idea. But how do you know whether is it PED or PES? Yes, you are basically correct.
Cost increase in marketing cost is the factor. Then increase in the price is also a factor, shifting the curve.
Okay, so which curve do you think will shift when there's an increase in marketing costs?
Producer, the supply curve.
Okay, so you can see, right, for part C, right, they didn't tell you what diagram you to draw, but at the very least, you should be aware that the best diagram to explain price change must be demand and supply. So don't draw PPC. Okay, so this tells you that either the supply will shift or the demand will shift or both will shift. So the key when you read the question, right, can you see that for part C, there's a cause and effect. So you are told that there's an increase in marketing costs. They are interested in asking you, following an increase in marketing costs, what happens to the price? What determines the increase in the price? So as I said from your TA2, right, most of you are able to recognize that when there's an increase in the cost of production, you are able to shift supply to the left. Okay, supply to the left. So it helps if you remember what I said, that when one curve shifts, right, it is a slope of the other curve that will tell you how much the price and quantity will change. We know that when supply falls, price must go up, quantity goes down. Okay, because the demand curve tends to be downward sloping. So when it comes to what determines how much the price goes up, right, the slope of the other curve that doesn't shift, that did not shift, which is the PED. Okay, PED. So you can see that part C, they're asking you about PED. Okay, so what I'm trying to say is that there'll be some questions where the econs concept is very clear, others will not be clear. So it is your job to figure out fast. Okay, figure out fast. You look at part D. So the concept here is private goods. So this may not be intuitive. What's the opposite of private goods? So I hope you can see what they are trying to test for part D. Pretty clear, right? Xiao Yi, you want to tell us? What is the opposite? What do you think is the opposite of a private good?
Public good.
Very good. Okay, so hopefully you recognize that, right? You will know that a public good is non-rival and non-excludable. So that means a private good should be rival and excludable. Okay, so for this question, because it's only two marks, right? You don't need to explain both. So one of the important skill, right? Use the marks as a guide to how much to write. So for 2 marks, right? Basically, you only need to explain one point. State that point and explain it well. Just remember, explain is not the same as state. Okay, it's not just enough to state that formula milk, right, is either rival or excludable. You got to explain what it means. Okay, what it means. So typically, from my experience, students find it easier to explain excludability rather than rivalry. So you can say that, okay, if you are not willing to pay the price of the milk, the seller can stop you from consuming the good. That's why formula milk is excludable. That's what you mean by explain. Don't just state that it is excludable. You explain what it means. Okay, it's very easy for the seller of formula milk to stop non-payers from consuming the good. Okay, so that's what it means for 2 months. For part B and C, right, some other tips I can say is this. As I've said to you, I said to you in class, right? Most students, why do they run out of time for E and F, for the 8-mark 10-mark question? They spend too much time trying to be perfectionists for part B and C. Okay, so take note that both part B and C, can you recognize that both requires the diagram? Okay, let me underline the keywords. So B and C, right, they specifically say you have to draw a diagram. So that means the diagram is worth at least 1 mark. Okay, at least 1 mark. So if you look at this, for part B, if diagram needs 1 mark, right, 2 marks is for the words explanation. And for part C, if the diagram is at least 1 mark, 3 marks are given for the words explanation. How do you know how much to write? So for part B, right, do you notice the word and? So as I said, right, every time you see the word and, please underline the word and. You know that since they have one and, 1 mark is for consumers, the other mark is for producers. So given there's only one mark each, right, please don't write so much for your part B. Just hit the point straight. Okay, consumers care about whether the price of the good goes up. Can they get the good? Just say it straight and then leave there. Producers, you can talk about PS or P times Q. Either total revenue or producer surplus. Hit the point and move on. Don't elaborate too much. Don't need to show how the change in PS. Don't need to show the change in CS. Okay, don't write too much for 1 mark question. For part C, right? As you remember what I taught you all for the GST essay, when it comes to PED, right, what they really want to see is the word proportional. Okay, is it more than proportional, less than proportional? So try to emphasize that word in your explanation. Okay, so don't write too much for a 3-mark question. So this is why, so in a sense, I hope you have realized that this is some of your friends from other classes, even your own class, some of them are able to do so well in econs. Some of them are able to manage their time well. It's because when they read all these questions, right, their brain automatically know what they are trying to ask for, and they are able to deliver. Okay, so this is what you should be trying to learn as you move in J1. Okay, J1. So if you look at E and F, so let's look at E and F. So E and F, right, the command word is discuss. So we did. Can you see that both questions, because of the word extend and whether, both questions requires what we call a TAS approach. Okay, what we call thesis, antithesis, and synthesis approach. Okay, you need what we call a balanced view. So you look at part E, right? You must have a balanced view. Okay, you must explain why the price mechanism might lead to an efficient allocation of resources. Okay, price mechanism can lead to an efficient allocation of resources. However, because the market may have some failure, the price mechanism might not lead to an efficient allocation of resources. So that's where your balanced view comes in. It might and it might not. Okay, then in your conclusion, you take a stand. Which one do you think is more likely to be happening in the context of the formula milk market in this case study. Now, from your TA2, right, what I've seen is that students like to write in a way that seems to contradict themselves. Do you notice I use the word might? Okay, might. So we have students who write, okay, price mechanism would lead to an efficient allocation. Then the expansion. Then the next paragraph says price mechanism would not lead to an efficient allocation. So try not to write in such a way that the marker have the impression that you might be contradicting yourself. So your both sides should be, it might happen, it might not. So that it's possible. Okay, it's possible. So your final stand, you can then state where are you going to put your chips on, which is the stand that you want to take. Would it? So try not to contradict yourself in your answer, and most definitely don't state your stand in your introduction, as I state. Okay, just stress that it might lead to efficiency, it might not lead to efficiency, then I will take a stand at the end. So likewise for part F, right, you need to have a balanced view, but let me highlight a few words. Do you see one N here? Okay, so this tells you that for breadth, for scope, you need to address both efficiency and equity. And there's also a word that's similar to N, is this word called all. Okay, all. So it means for breadth, you also need to explain the existing measures as well as explaining how a government subsidy might be used. Okay, so to address efficiency, equity, current measures, and subsidies. Try not to miss out one of them. Okay, then your final stand you should take is that, okay, should I stick to existing measures? Should the government stick to existing measures or use a new policy, which is subsidy? Okay, so that's your final stand. Okay, so this basically both E and F require some kind of planning. So my advice is that give yourself enough time. Okay, enough time. Don't spend too much time in your 12 marks DRQ until you run out of time for the 18 marks. So remember, a case study, let me stress again, a case study, right, especially for J1 and even for your J2 friends, right, it's a race against time. In an actual A-level case study, right, you have to do 2 case studies within 2 hours and 15 minutes. That means you have 1 hour, 7.5 minutes for each case study. Okay, each case study. So it's really a race against time. You want to give yourself enough time for the 8 marks and the 10 mark question. Okay, 8 marks is 6 plus 2, 10 marks is 7 plus 3. So what I advise you to do is every time you spend too much time trying to be a perfectionist in your DRQs, your opportunity cost is the foregone marks in your HOS question. Okay, you run out of time, you forego the benefits of taking a final stand for your DRQ, for your 8-mark HOS as well as the 10-mark HOS. You lose out the +2 and +3, which you could have easily gotten had you spent more time. Okay, so the choice of spending time is important. Spend more time in the higher order skills question. Okay, so these are the basic tips that I'm sure we will drill to you, keep drilling to you even in your promos exam as well as your second year. So bear this in mind as you do your block test. So it's a bit of a shame in a sense to ask me that your case study, right, is not the full case study for the block test. Okay, so do bear this in mind. Okay, so let's go back to the case study. So hopefully when you understand the question, right, you are now reading the case study for a purpose. So let me use a red pen. Every case study has an overall title. So in this case, Formula Milk Market. And have you noticed that this case study, right, if you look at the source, the year is all 2 years before. Okay, so here is 2017. Okay. 2017, 2017, 2017. Now, this exam was set in 2019. So we deliberately choose the sources that happened 2 years ago. Your A level should be like that. Okay, what we do realize after all these years is that let's say you're doing your A level next year, okay, 2022. You can expect the case study sources to be taken from 2020. That means last year. Okay, last year. They try not to use the events of that year for the case studies because they think it's not fair to expect students to be aware of the news on the same year of the A levels. Okay, so usually, but they expect you to know 2 years before. Okay, so that's why we always tell you, right? Please keep up with the news because your wish, your prayer is that they'll use a case study using a news that you have already read many times and you understand what the news is all about. That is your dream also for your general paper 2, right? That if they can use some extract from some book that you have already read, I mean, you are going to do very well for the paper 2, right? So it's the same type of reason, same kind of reason why we want you to keep up the news. Okay, so if you are aware, right, 2017, this news came out, many members of parliament in PAP also talk about this. Okay, also talk about this because this was the year where there was an outcry that the prices of such milk is very expensive. Have you been to NTUC supermarket with your parents? You see that there are basically 2 types of milk. One is the fresh milk that most of us drink. Okay, the Paul, Cowherd. These are either fresh milk or UHT. The price is pretty low. Then there are those cans where the milk is in powder form. These are called formula milk. The price of these is over the roof. It's really very expensive. And a lot of parents, they have this view that their baby, when they are born, they should drink the powdered milk instead of the fresh milk that all of us drink. Okay, because the firms are making claim that if your baby drink the powdered milk, okay, their IQ will develop better, they'll be stronger and all these things. So these are their claims. And many parents apparently believe them, so they are buying them. But the price is really over the top. Okay, it's very high. So these parents are basically complaining. So if you're aware of that, you can even anticipate all the questions that they ask for this. Okay, so my advice to students again, please keep up with the news. Please apply what you learn in course to the news. If you are blessed next year for the A level, the case study will use an extract that you have already covered in your classes, and therefore your time management will be very good. Okay, very good. So take a note of extract 1. Okay, extract 1. Extract 1 tells you why the price of milk is high because of the cost of production. So this is what you can expect for one of the questions, right? The 4 marks demand and supply question. These are the claims. So these are all claims by the firms. Okay, so making promises. So a lot of parents have this view that, hey, these firms are saying that if my baby drink the specially expensive formula milk, the IQ is better and their health is also better. And okay, so interestingly, misinformed and mistaken. Now, when actually I was the one that came up with this case study 2 years ago. So when I set this case study, right, if you have time, right, you can take some time to click on the link here. Okay, where we get the source from. So just like your PW, right? Whenever you use other sources, you should try to acknowledge. So if you click on the links on your free time, right, you realize that some of the words may not have appeared in the source itself. So I believe when I came up with this, right, the word misinformed, that means this sentence may not have appeared in the case study. Okay, this sentence here. Any doctor feedback suggests misinformed. Okay, this one may not be the case study. This one may not be the extract itself. So the point is this: we put the word misinformed and mistakenly specifically to help the J1 students know what market failure they should use for the 8 marks part E question. Okay, now that you have read this, right, do you know what is the market failure you should use for part E? Okay, can I have Ivan? Ivan?
Wait, I'm not sure.
Okay, my question is this. Now that you have read extract 1, you have seen the word misinformed. Parents may have been misinformed.
Wait. Yeah, is it imperfect information?
Very good. Yes, that's correct. Ivan. Well done. So you can see, right? J1, we the moral story is that J1, we tend to be very kind. Okay, we deliberately insert words in to point to students what is the econs they should use. Okay, you may not get that in your year 2, so stress that that it's not too difficult not to fail in econ. That's my point. Okay, if you read all these words, if you've been paying attention in class, you should be aware that the market failure for part E, the antithesis, should be imperfect information. Nothing else. Okay, clear? Okay, let's look at extract 2 and 3. Extract 2 is also quite blatant, right? Can you see the word regulate? Okay, so remember part F, right? Part F will ask you what are the existing measures. That means you have to be aware what are the existing measures used by firms. Okay, so the word regulate should tell you that one of the existing measures is regulation. Okay, regulation. And not only that, look at extract 3. Do you see the word public educational campaign? So again, if you go back to the source of extract 3, okay, I believe, yeah, this was the title, HPV to launch campaign on kids' educational needs. So we are kind enough in J1 to put the word public education. The sole reason is to tell you that one existing policy is public education. So if you forgot about imperfect information, right? Hopefully when you read extract 3, you say, okay, public education is the typical policy for imperfect information. So for part E, I must use imperfect information. For part F, I must make sure I talk about regulation and public education as the current policies. Okay, current policies. So I hope you can see from all these, right, that J1, we are pretty kind. Okay, we are pretty kind. So now that you are in HBL, your parents may be around you. So you can remind them that, hey, it's not too difficult not to fail for econs. With so much help that we give, so much blatant and explicit help we give, it's harder to fail than to pass. It's harder to fail than to pass. So all we are asking you is to make sure that you pay attention during class, read all these words, and you are able to recall what are the correct econs terms to use. Are you all clear? So please let your parents know that econs is not that difficult to pass. Okay, you can still fail, it must be very exceptional. Okay, so make sure for part F you talk about public education as well as regulation. Any questions so far? So when I read extract 3, you see that interestingly, I also learned something new when I said this case study. For children more than 12 months, formula milk is not even required. So maybe if it's true that this education will work, the mothers will know that once my baby is 1 year old, past 1 year old, I can, if I really want the baby to drink milk, just buy the fresh milk that all of us drink. There's no need to buy the expensive powdered milk. Okay, so some of these points you can use in your final stand, your various questions. Any questions? Are we good here? Okay, so basically this is what the case study is about. So I already have the answer. I already posted the answers in Google Classroom. Okay, so maybe I'll just go through quickly some of the key points. Okay, you can find this in your Google Classroom. Can I recommend you firstly, of course, you should try it out on your own first before looking at the answer. So just like math, right? You won't learn a lot if you just read the answer straight away without trying first. And when you read, right, can I advise you all, please spend time reading the examiner's comments. Personally, I learn more from reading the examiner's comments than the answer itself. Because by reading, right, you will have a sense of, okay, those of your seniors, your grand seniors, those from 19S63, those who have done this, right, when they are J1, what are the common mistakes that they make, that they typically make when they are doing this? So don't make the same mistakes. Okay, so the examiner's comments actually okay, show you some things that you can do. So for example, right, for A part 1, okay, for one mark, right, don't write too much. Just say it increased or it generally increased. That's all. Okay, so you can get 1 mark just by saying that it increased. Okay, it increased. Don't you write too much for 1 mark question. For part 2, right, take note that for YED, right, now in table 2, income has increased. Okay, so if formula milk is a normal good, that means if a YED is positive, means that it's at least a normal good, the demand should increase. Okay, so the point is that when the demand increases, ceteris paribus, you should expect the price to increase. Okay, the price to increase. I think a lot of students, when they do this, they forgot to link the fact that YED is not about price increase. Some students, when they look at table 1 and 2, they panic because table 1 talks about price. So they just say, okay, because income increase, price increase, therefore it is a normal good. Therefore, YED is positive. That's not correct. YED is about how an income change lead to a demand change. But table 1 is about price. So you must try to link the demand increase to saying that price will increase. Okay, will increase. Now the command word comment, they sort of like you to have an alternative. Okay, that no, you see, I said ceteris paribus, right? So if the YED is positive, ceteris paribus, when income increase, price should increase because demand is increased. However, the increase in price could be due to a shift of the supply curve, or the demand could have shifted for any other reason other than income. Okay, so that's why it's a bit more demanding here to score 2 marks. Okay, you got to give a however. So the word comment, the command word comment requires some kind of evaluation. Okay, it's a bit demanding, I agree. So a lot of students only get 1 mark here. So if they score 1 mark for the A part 1, they score 1 mark for A part 2, but that's fine. Okay, that's fine. So don't worry if you lose a mark because you fail to understand what they're trying to say. For part B, okay, take a look. I think part B is self-explanatory. Okay, so you can read. For part C, okay, part C. So the easiest way to score the mark, let me show you. They didn't really draw the graph here, right? So let me show you what kind of graph they expect. Okay, we can draw together. So as I said, right, I'm drawing using a mouse, so the diagram will not be very neat. Yours should be better. So the key is that you know part C is trying to ask you about the PED, right? You know that when there's a rise in marketing cost, supply always shift to the left. Okay, always shift to the left. So you know that if the demand is inelastic, the price increase should be more than the quantity fall. That means when the quantity fall, it falls by less than proportionate. So the correct graph to draw, the easiest graph I think for students to draw is the one where there are 2 demand curves. Okay, let me draw using a mouse. I hope by now you mastered how to draw a graph like that. Okay, your supply curve should cut. Okay, so as I'm drawing, you can draw on your own. So this is the price and quantity of formula milk before the increase in marketing cost. So this allows you to shift supply to the left. Okay, S0 to S1. So you can see, right, in your words, make sure you explain that, you can clearly see that if the demand for formula milk is price inelastic, can you see the increase in price will be much higher? So let me call this Pi to show this it is inelastic. Let me call this PE. Okay, so the point is this: you begin at P naught. Okay, so the question asks you what determines the size. So what this graph clearly shows is that if the demand for formula milk is priced inelastic, okay, when there's an increase in the cost of production, increase in the marketing cost, the price increase is from P naught to Pi. But if the demand for formula milk is price elastic, the increase in price is only from P naught to PE. Okay, so clearly the more inelastic the demand curve is, the larger the size of the increase in the price following the rise in marketing costs. Are you clear? So when you draw your graph, please make full use of the graph in your explanation in order to get all 3 marks. Okay, all 3 marks. Now, so we have students who draw all kinds of graphs. So what we do is that we allow students to also shift the demand curve, because we do have scripts that say that, okay, following the marketing, people change their taste and preference towards formula milk. So instead of shifting the supply curve, they shift demand to the right. Okay, we didn't expect that. We expect students to shift supply curve, but we don't want to mark them wrong because they are not wrong. Okay, so if the marketing does work, people's taste and preference will shift. So they end up shifting the demand curve. That's fine. Okay, that's not ideal. We probably not give them 4/4, but if they explain that it does depends on PES, we'll give them at least 3/4. Okay, 3/4. Of course, if they shift the demand curve and then they claim that it is the PED that determine, that will be incorrect. Okay, that will be incorrect. So my point is, my advice to students is don't make unnecessary assumptions. We know that when the marketing costs increase, right, the cost of production will always rise. But it is not guaranteed that when the firms do marketing, people will change taste and preference. Okay, it's not guaranteed to happen. So when you say that it shifts the demand to the right, you are relying on an additional assumption, which is what we call too strong a point. Okay, that's why we don't really like it. But if you do this, we will still give it at least 3/4. Okay, so my advice is, if you're not sure, right, please choose the approach that requires the least assumptions. Rise in marketing costs, cost of production always rise. Okay, but just because a firm spend on marketing, it doesn't mean that it will work. It doesn't mean that it will change people's taste and preference. So that requires an additional assumption. So that's what we call a strong argument. Okay, strong argument. So my advice is try to stick to the weakest argument. Okay, don't make an argument that requires too many assumptions. Are you clear? Okay, so let's take a look. For part D, okay, so take a look at. So 1 mark for stating that it is a private good, 1 mark for explaining either rivalry or consumption. So we don't need, do we need to score both parts? Yeah, actually for this one, you only need to do 1. Okay, do 1. If you do 2, of course, it's fine. Okay, for part E, right? Part E, from our experience, students tend to write too much on imperfect information, but they forgot to explain how the price mechanism might lead to an efficient allocation. So remember, breadth is important. Don't write a lopsided answer. Don't write an unbalanced answer. So your TA2, right? Some of y'all may have only talked about the text without talking about e-cigarettes or the other way around. So as a result, you don't get the marks. Okay, so try to have a balanced view first. So for the thesis, right, you can write very short. You can say that, okay, if MPP equals to MPC and if MPB is equals to MSB, and if MPC is equals to MSC, the price mechanism means that all of us will equate MPB to MPC, but by doing so, right, we are also indirectly also equating MSB to MSC. So that is how the market outcome can coincide with the socially efficient outcome. Okay, just need to explain that. You want to draw a graph, is fine. If you have time for only one graph, please draw the imperfect information graph. Only if you have time, right? Then you draw two graphs. So this one is actually not, is optional. Okay, optional. Are you clear? If you can draw both graphs, it'd be great. But if there's only time for one graph, it's far more critical for you to draw the imperfect information graph because you need to shape the correct deadweight loss. Okay, but you still need to explain with words the thesis. So try to say MPB, MSB, MPC, MSC. Okay. Then for your antitheses, you talk about imperfect information. Okay, try to use case info about the mistaken. Okay, mistaken and misperceived. Okay, so remember what I said in your TA2, right? To do well in case study, you should try to have some info from the case. Don't use your own points if the case has the info. Okay, you draw your graph. So in this case, the graph should be this, right? Okay. Oops. Okay, so I'm using a mouse, so may not be very neat. This is your MPB per C. This is your MPC. This is your MPB actual. So the context is saying that parents overconsume formula milk. Had they known the true benefits, they would consume only here. This is your QE. Okay, so you can see that because they are misperceived, they are so-called tricked by the firms to think that the formula milk grants certain benefit to their kids. They are paying this price. Had they been educated about the true benefits, right? This is the price that would have happened. How do you know how to not to shape the wrong deadweight loss? So remember, the correct output is QE. The tip of the triangle, right, must always point towards the correct one. So it is very tempting to shape the wrong deadweight loss. Okay, so the correct one is here. Okay, this is correct. Because the tip point towards the correct QE. If you shape the wrong area, okay, you'll be this. This is wrong. Okay, because can you see the tip points away from QE? So don't shape the correct deadweight loss. So if you look at the examiner's comments, right? Let me highlight here. Okay, do you see this? Okay, so when you draw a graph, remember, if you only time for one graph, please draw the imperfect information graph. Please shape the correct deadweight loss. Okay, and your final stand, right? From my experience, I think it's easier to state a stand that there is, in fact, allocated inefficiency. It's easier to justify this stand. Okay, this standard. Okay, there's enough evidence in the case to tell you that a lot of parents are using price as an indicator. It was found in the case, so try to quote that. If you're going to use price as an indicator, right, you would think that the higher the price, the better the quality of the milk. So if fresh milk is cheaper, fresh milk shouldn't be too good. But formula milk is so expensive, surely it is good. That is an indication of misperception, of misinformation. Okay, it's the easiest to state a stand there. Clear? So try to state a stand and to put your justification. Any questions for part E? Okay, rest of this time, I just say a few things about F. For F, right? Okay, let's see. Okay, for F is about efficiency and equity. So my advice for students is this: the easiest policy to give a good econs explanation is public education. Okay, public education. Please refer back to the graph. Can I encourage you all that there are certain policies in market failure that you should pick if you have a choice. Okay, because you can use the graph in your explanation. So just like your externalities, right? Market-based policy, taxes for negative externality, subsidies for positive externalities, is the easiest to explain, to show econ depth because you can use the graph. you go through the steps. Okay, it lowers the MPC or it raises the MPC. Individuals equate MPC prime to MPB, hence they are internalizing the externality. You are able to use the graph in your explanation. So likewise, right, for imperfect information, okay, can I strongly recommend all of you give a good job in explaining public education. So when you explain the graph, let me show again. You can draw a new graph, but if you don't, you can use the same graph in part E. So if this is MP actual, oh no, it's so late. MPB actual and MPB perceived. You want to stress that if the public education is successful, right, this line basically vanishes. Okay, there's no more misperception. This will be the only MPB that exists in the market. So it's like this MPB perceived, either you can say shift to the left or it vanishes. So once the parents are fully informed, right, the demand for formula milk will be much lower, and hence you are able to reach the efficient output, okay, the correct output. You don't over consume the milk, and the price also will be correspondingly lower. So can I advise, please explain the graph well. Use the graph and explain public education very well. This is where you can score the content. Okay. Then your subsidy, right? If you want to draw a graph, you can draw the graph that I taught you in your book 2. Do you recall? Okay, so if you want it to be more equitable, okay, you shift supply to the right with a subsidy. So it lowers the price to the buyers, but raise the price to the seller. Okay, so this means that the low-income households, right, are able to afford the milk. So one of the reasons for equity, as I explained many times, right, if you are low income, you may have the willingness, but you lack the ability to signal your want. So that is also an unsatisfactory allocation. So by having a government subsidy, you are lowering the price for the low income so that they can consume the milk. But okay, one of my common points that I taught you is that this is a very poorly targeted policy. So you ask me, right, the easiest stand for you all to use is that existing policies should be maintained. The government should not subsidize formula milk because number one, okay, formula milk is really not that necessary. Once your kid is 12 months old, as the case study has, once the baby is past the 12 months, there's no need for him to drink formula milk. So if you were to subsidize, right, not only is it a waste of money, but the second thing is this: the rich are also able to buy the milk at the lower price. So you end up subsidizing the rich as well. Okay, as I made the point about water in Singapore, you shouldn't anyhow subsidize goods, right? Distort the price mechanism because you are subsidizing both the rich and the poor. It's a very poorly targeted policy. If you're really worried about the poor for equity purpose, right, why not just give money directly to the poor so that they can confront the true price of milk and they can decide for themselves. Do they really want the baby to drink the formula milk, or should I just use regular milk, or even just stick to breastfeeding? So extract 3, right, they talk about breastfeeding. So if the mother can be encouraged to breastfeed the baby, you don't even need to buy formula milk. Okay, all these claims about IQ, about being strong, all these could be bluff one. Okay, could be fake news. Are you clear? So the easiest step I think for students to take is that continue with the existing policies. Don't bother subsidizing the milk. Okay, don't bother. Are you clear? So my point is, whatever stand you take, right, please be aware. Take a final stand. Take a final stand. Don't sit on the fence. Please don't say use both. Okay, don't say use a multi-pronged approach. Stick to one and justify it. At least you can get +2. Okay, +2, if not +3. Are you clear? So it's easier to have the final stand that you should stick to the existing policy rather than to take a stand that you should subsidized. Singapore, we are usually very against distorting the price mechanism by subsidizing. If you really want to help the poor, as I said to you many times, right, we give money directly to the poor. We don't distort the price mechanism. Okay, clear? So this is the final step. Any questions? Okay, so we have gone through the necessary skills. Okay, I hope you can learn how to do well. Okay, so the point is that if you are able to take a stand and justify the stand, usually for most econs questions, the stand is kind of clear what stand they want to take. Okay, so identify the stand, hit the stand, and explain it. Okay, any questions? Are we good? Okay, so so this is basically the last lesson, and your June holidays will start next week. So tomorrow, right, there will be a SLS lesson for you to do that involves the 2 essays that came out in the question list. I've already given you the answer for the 2 essays as well, together with this case study in the Google Classroom. So you can also download. But my advice again, try the SLS lesson first before you look at the answers. Try your best to do it your own first, okay? And during the, tomorrow, right, there'll be an econs clinic. There's just WhatsApp you all the link. You all can sign up. But let me stress again, there's no teaching tomorrow. It's just for you all to ask your questions. So if you don't have any questions, you shouldn't and you don't have to sign up. Okay, so if no one has any questions, there will actually be no clinic. Okay, so the clinic, I'll give you the link. If you have any questions since the start of the year until now, please sign up, and then you can click into the Zoom link. Okay, come in, ask your questions. You can also learn from the questions that someone else asked. But if no one asks the question, then there will be no course lesson. Are you clear? Final thing is that during the June break, right, please plan your time properly. Come up with a study timetable. Okay, I always advise to every student, if you don't have a study timetable, right, the June holidays will go past very fast. You will want to study, but as the saying goes, right, your mind may be willing, but your flesh is weak. Okay, it's weak. So plan a study timetable. Try to maybe at least have half the time each day to study. Okay, usually from our experience, students who plan to play very hard in the 2 weeks, right, usually don't end up studying very hard in the last 2 weeks. Okay, it doesn't work that way. It's better to spend maybe half of each day studying. Then the other half you can play. Okay, you can play. So spend half the time, okay, planning which day do econs, which day do chemistry, which day do math. Okay, and then execute it well. Okay, and now there are some remedial questions that I just WhatsApp you all this morning. There'll be some of you that have to have a special remedial during the first week. They know who they are required to actually stay back after this. The rest of you all, right, you all can try out those questions. Okay, I will again have a Zoom class with those students. I will record the lesson. So if you want to learn something, you can then access the video recording. I'll also post the answers to those essays in the remedial question list at the end of week 1 for you all to look. So you can try it out for fun. Okay, try to learn. And that's basically what it is. So if you need to ask questions during your econs, during the 1 week break, right? Please request. So if there's enough, I'll try to put you on the same day, same time. Then we can have a Zoom session to answer, or you can ask through WhatsApp. Usually, from my experience, some of these questions are not well explained using WhatsApp. So you may want to arrange for a Zoom consult during the 1 month break. Any questions? Okay, so if not, that's basically all. So there are, I think, 2 of you all that are required to actually stay back. I need to brief you all about the remedial in next week. The rest of you all can basically go off now. Thanks for coming to this class. Okay, have a good one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Okay, so there are 2 of you that will stay back. Okay, the rest of you all can go. Okay. Hanlin has. Okay, let me read. I think Hanlin is not in the list, right? Take home with them. I think they are AFK, correct. Let me remove them. Okay. Let me remove 100. Okay, that's all right. You too, right? Okay, so let me share. Have you all download this? Let me share the PDF file. Where is it at? Have you all seen this in the IEMB? This is the what will happen in the June. This basically gives you the date for the block test paper in next term. I want to highlight the bottom part. So okay, so let me read the one in the blue first. So the story goes that the two of you, right, I think from your TA1 and TA2, your results are not that great. So I've selected the two of you to be part of this. The June study program happening on the first week of June break. So I don't know whether have other tutors also wrote you in for their respective subjects. Have they? Okay, so if they have not, and when they finally inform you, right, please let them know that Monday next week and Friday next week, 10 to 11:30, they are taken for econs. Okay, so for the two of you, right, you all must attend the, I'll give you a Zoom link afterwards, you all must attend the session. Okay, the session. Okay, so if you are not, right, you have to have an acceptable reason. Ideally, a medical cert. Okay, so take note of what I highlighted here. Okay, absence must be covered by acceptable reason. So you have the question. Yes, any questions?
Mr. Tan, because on Monday, right, on our assigned econs consultation date, I have a well-being champ workshop that overlaps with it. So is there any way I can go for like another one?
Okay.
Like the one on 31st May.
Actually, you have to attend both, but you got a well-being workshop, is it?
Yeah.
So far, you are the only one who has said that. So because you are the class rep, is it, or student?
Because I'm in FatCom.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay lah. So in this case, I think it's fine. So in this case, okay, because the second one will be two different questions. So you're not be, but I guess what you can do is you can then look at the video clip and then look at the answers. So I think if it's just one, is fine. So you are only missing the one on Monday, is it?
Yeah.
So Yi Xuan, do remember that and remind me if I ask you on that day. Okay, so for your case, it's fine. You can miss the first one. So, but of course, try to do the questions before as usual, and then so that you can learn more during the Zoom session. Okay, any other things to ask? Are you all clear? Okay, so I've given you the two questions to be done in the first section, two questions to be done in the second one. So make sure you try to do it and attend the Zoom session next week. Okay, is that clear? Okay, so basically that's all. Okay, so I'll see you next Monday for most of you. Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.